Ladies and gentlemen, imagine a car so humble, so compact, and so unapologetically weird that it was once mocked across 11 time zones. And yet, like a Soviet Rocky Balboa, it got back up, growled with its tiny V4 lungs, and drove into history. No, we're not talking about a shoebox with wheels. We're talking about the ZAZ-965 Zaporozhets, the rear-engined, air-cooled, side-eyed underdog of the Cold War, known to its friends as Humpback, and to its enemies as still running. Massive thanks to the brilliant folks who support this channel. You keep the wheels spinning, the engine humming, and my garage free of raccoons. Because of you, I've finally stopped auditioning for dinner theater with scenes like Titanic, the parking lot edition. One supporter even mailed me a ZAZ-965 miniature with a note that said, "This is the only car you'll never overcomplicate." Honestly? Fair point. Now, buckle up and twist those heater dials, though in a Zaporozhets you might want to bring a blanket just in case. Let's rewind to the late 1950s Soviet Union. The Kremlin wanted wheels for the people, something small, cheap, and preferably not held together with vodka and hope. Minister Nikolai Strokin took one look at the Fiat 600 and said, "Da, but make it rugged." Thus began Project Moskvich 444. Initial design came out of Moscow, but since Moskvich was already busy producing cars, the project was moved to Zaporozhets, Ukraine. The Kommunar combine harvester factory was converted into an automobile plant and renamed ZZ. By October 1960, the first ZAZ-965 had rolled out, squeaky and proud. Designed to look like the Fiat 600's awkward cousin, the Zaporozhets had some key differences. While the Fiat had a liquid-cooled inline-4, the Soviets opted for a 746cc air-cooled V4, originally intended for military use. Magnesium alloy block, 23 horsepower, and enough torque to make a mule jealous. Not powerful, but hardy, like your uncle who built a shed from leftovers and sheer spite. The car entered production in 1960, retailing at 1,300 roubles, about 15 months of an engineer's salary, or as local humor went, the price of 1,000 bottles of vodka. Either way, it was the cheapest car in the USSR, cheaper even than the truth during party meetings. Designed to serve the common man, it soon found itself beneath the likes of war veterans, school teachers, and anyone who couldn't wait 5 years for a Volga. Khrushchev himself inspected a prototype and reportedly fit inside with room to wiggle. Good ergonomics or just Khrushchev-shaped upholstery? We may never know. In 1962, the improved 965A appeared with a bigger engine, 887cc and 27 horsepower, later 30, enough extra muscle to hit a blistering 90 kilometers per hour, 56 miles per hour, assuming gravity helped. Production lasted until 1969, with 322,000 built. The car earned nicknames like Hunchback and Soapbox, terms once mocking but now nostalgic, like bell-bottoms or Soviet elevators. So what lay under the hump? Well, apart from hope and fumes, the ZZ-965 had that charming little air-cooled V4 positioned in the rear. Starting with the MZ-965 746cc engine making 23 horsepower, and later the 887cc M966 producing 27 to 30 horsepower, it wasn't going to win drag races, but it would start on cold mornings and survive salt, snow, and poorly tied shoelaces. Fuel economy hovered around 5.5 liters per 100 kilometers, about 42 miles per gallon, making it friendlier on the wallet than a Moscow cab driver in traffic. The car ran its power through a 4-speed manual gearbox with synchromesh on second, third, and fourth. First gear was non-synchronized, which meant every launch came with a prayer. Some models for disabled veterans even featured an electromagnetic clutch, basically the Soviet version of an automatic, minus any of the convenience. The gearbox was sturdy, like a Soviet grandmother, hard to shift, impossible to break. Physically, the ZAZ-965 was a study in practical absurdity. At just 10 feet 11 inches, 3,330 millimeters long, and 4 feet 7 inches, 1,400 millimeters wide, it could be parked in places normally reserved for goats. It weighed 1,466 pounds, 665 kilograms, soaking wet. The ground clearance, about 175 millimeters, 6.9 inches, in production trim, meant it could crawl over potholes, rocks, and the occasional political dissident. With about a 42-58 front-to-rear weight split and an independent rear end on triangular trailing arms with coils, it still cornered like a shopping cart with an attitude. But it got there, and what suspension! The front borrowed from the Volkswagen Beetle's torsion bar setup. The rear had diagonal trailing arms with coil springs and a healthy dose of unpredictability. Brakes were drums all around, because when you're only doing 90 kilometers per hour, 56 miles per hour, downhill, you don't need discs, you need faith. Steering was unassisted but manageable thanks to the featherweight front end. The tires, thin 135 ATR13s, looked like bicycle hoops, but the hubs used 4 lugs. Inside, the ZAZ-965 was Spartan but shockingly smart. Suicide doors hinged at the rear made entry easier, especially for disabled drivers. The dashboard had just enough dials to prevent boredom: speedometer, fuel gauge, a few toggle, and a speedo needle that danced like a drunk ballet dancer. The cabin seated 4 technically, though rear passengers had to sacrifice legroom and possibly circulation. Heating was available but faint. On cold days, you could defrost the windows faster by exhaling on them. One clever touch was the underbody. It was totally flat. That meant no snagging on rocks or roadkill, and in deep mud or snow, 2 or 3 hardy souls could lift one end or pivot the Zaporozhets back onto firm ground, and they often did. Performance-wise? Imagine a sloth driving into a headwind. 0 to 60 kilometers per hour, 0 to 37 miles per hour took half a minute and some encouragement. Top speed was around 90 kilometers per hour, 56 miles per hour, on a downhill slope with the wind at your back and your enemies cheering. But none of that mattered. The Zaporozhets wasn't fast, it was faithful. It was simple enough to be repaired with a hammer and a borrowed wrench, and that, in the USSR, was more important than horsepower. Design-wise, the ZAZ-965 was like a pug in a parking lot. Awkward, squat, and kind of adorable if you tilted your head. Its stubby nose and engine-humped rear earned it the nickname Hunchback, while its bug-eyed headlights and creased hood gave it a perpetual look of mild confusion. Built as a unibody with 2 doors and a fixed steel roof, the ZAZ didn't do luxury, but it did do lasts 20 winters quite well. The front trunk housed the fuel tank, spare wheel, and a smidge of luggage space, somewhere between a shoebox and a bread box. With no radiator up front, thanks to air cooling, the design was simpler, though the gas tank's placement ahead of the driver did raise eyebrows. Inside, the materials were basic but functional. A heater, visors, and door pockets were present, and if you were lucky, you got a radio, though many just sang louder. Market-wise, the ZAZ-965 was the Soviet everyman's dream, mostly because there wasn't much else. The Moskvich 407 cost over 2,500 rubles, a Gaz Volga could set you back 5,000. The Zaporozhets at 1,800 was actually reachable, even if you had to wait years or prove your loyalty with several jars of pickles and a glowing party recommendation. It was offered to disabled war veterans at reduced or no cost, often with special hand control variants. These cars weren't just transport, they were freedom, and in a country short on both, that made them precious. Today, prices have gone from scrapyard jokes to collector's auctions. In its day, the ZAZ cost about $1,000, or around $10,000 when adjusted for inflation. Now, a pristine example can fetch $10,000 to $20,000 on Western markets. One restored beauty sold for $21,000 in Russia, while another got listed for $35,000 in Bulgaria after 8 years of work. What makes the ZAZ-965 worth remembering isn't just its engineering or price. It's the culture it created. Cartoons depicted it as a flying bathtub. Jokes flooded radio shows and newspapers. People mocked it until they owned one. And then, like a stubborn cat that keeps coming back, it grew on them. It did what it promised: carry 4 people and a bottle of vodka across any road in the Union and maybe even back again. It wasn't just a car. It was a companion, a slow, smoky, squeaky little friend with a metal grin and a never-say-die attitude. So hit that subscribe button, comrades. May your oil be clean, your gears not grind, and your heater work better than a babushka's knitted socks. Until next time, keep your wheels weird.